you'd be instructed to go down the main corridor, turn at the flags, and return back to this spot through the center corridor. And over the summer, we put together some additional exhibits here along this wall. We discovered how we had to perfect our own signage, and for a variety of reasons it was long in coming. So to make it, we found that people weren't looking at the bulletin boards, which we thought was natural. So we hauled up this particular extra box that came with us but wasn't used, and put the welcome sign, a bit about the theme, and a reminder that there's a Trivia of the Week question. And there's a plaque from one of our sponsors, Cantel. They gave us the cellular phones that were used especially during the weekends where we needed we needed to be able to handle emergencies and couldn't get access to the school phone system, so we used Cantel service. So let's start to walk down the main corridor as I drag the power supply. And here is the Trivia of the Week. We had 2 Trivia of the Week questions the entire time. Craig Kingston, one of the volunteers, came across this particular question, and we took all of our questions out of the Computer Bowl Trivia book. And this one asks about core memories, where they were the machines to make core memory adapted from pill making machines, wine cork making machines, or sewing machines. And on the answer, which is located at the end of the formal exhibits over there, Craig wrote, "And don't forget to ask about seeing our core memory." So we brought a piece of core memory. It was in this box. So after, you can see this core plane. And the answer is a pill machine, of course. Also, what we did is our theme is input, process, output, and to help get the point across, we used these symbols. And each machine was identified with one of those symbols to help the visitor figure out what the machine did at a glance. Now we're coming up on our centerpiece exhibit. It's based on the 360 Model 22, and we surrounded it with input devices, input technology. With the centerpiece was the processing technology, and then we end off with output technology. So we had a IBM 29 key punch. I always thought they were called O29s, but on the faceplate on this machine it just says 29. We had a supply of cards, punched cards, blank cards. We have some right line, card stacks, and all the different paraphernalia and accessories you would commonly find in a data center. Plus this box of new cards we'd give to people for them to get an idea how heavy all this technology was. And then we have a Data 100 key to tape system, which we set up to show how the technology evolved. Error checking is able to be done offline now, and whereas before it went from the primary data entry operator to the verifier and back and forth to correct the problems, and then problems come back to the processor where they're identified and then come back here. That's how we were able, through discussions like that and stories like that, we were able to help people appreciate how far we've come along, not strictly from the technological point of view, but from what the technology how the technology allowed us to simplify procedures. So 3211 drives, 2841 controller, 2501, 1442. Notice how the doors are open on the CPU of the 22. We called this a computer petting zoo, where people were encouraged to come along, open up the boxes, sit down, push buttons, look at the manuals, do whatever you've ever wanted to do with an old computer. There were some great shots taken of people with their fingers on buttons or dials. Visitors would take pictures of one another appearing to actually operate the equipment. We suspended signs from the rafters. It was actually very easy to do, and the signs themselves gave a particular air to the museum. It helped make it more professional. And so we've also helped explain that this configuration here, the centerpiece, was a demonstration of a batch processing system. So there's a 2821 for the printer, 2415 model, whatever they are, tape drives, 1403, a decollator, and a burster, and of course a tape rack. So we were able to talk about how tape drives have unique ID numbers, just like PC has drive A, drive C, those unique letterings, and how the programmer would type in a command so that when a particular tape was needed for a program's execution, the notice would come out on the operator's console. The operator would go over and find that tape by color code and by numeric and identifiers, and the programmer would also have identified what tape drive to mount it on. The operator would find the right tape drive, mount the right tape on the right tape drive, acknowledge the fact the tape is loaded, and we're off to the races. Again, another demonstration of how labor intensive and how difficult how tedious this technology was to work with. And of course we have a rack of IBM manuals for the 22 CPU and peripherals. We have paper going through the 1403, and we show the two carts for providing the paper. This is the paper supply. Here's the Cantel exhibit. In exchange for the phone systems that we're packing up to ship back, Cantel was able to advertise their wares here, and they chose something very appropriate, which is a complete history of data cellular modems. Also for people as a backgrounder, and also to help people see the significance of what we're doing and other people's impressions, we posted articles that were printed over the summer. There's one missing, which was just printed last Saturday, that appeared in the record. So here now, we're going to this interactive system. And that is the DEC 2020, of course 55, system 55. RPO 6 drives from the back. You see there are flags. You see a banner from our internet provider. And we'll get to the other systems a little later on. Get it. The video review. So here's a exhibit number 2, DEC 2020, DEC System 20. As the sign points out, it's a demonstration of interactive processing, to contrast with the batch processing card-based system we just looked at. We talk about emphasize the computer petting zoo, open up the panels. In fact, we even put some signs inside the panels. Show how long the system was. We asked people to, pick up the 10 platter, the 12 platter packs, get an idea just how heavy everything in this technology was. The predominant characteristic of the interactive system is the remote terminal. Here we have two different types, both from DEC, and a DEC remote printer. And we talked about the origins of personal computing. where no matter where you were, you felt the computer was all your own from your particular terminal. And then we also included a deck writer as the operator console. So you can get a shot of the 11 that sits inside the 20 to help boot it and do all the other things that are important. And again, just get a feel for the size of this particular box. A real drawing card. Whoops. Just had to get untangled. A real drawing card of this particular system was the three-phase power connector. And I was on CBC holding it. Lots of people came and were just amazed by it. The record took pictures of people holding it. And it does tell a story in itself, doesn't it? You mean, that's the plug? Whoa. It was a launching point to discuss the fact that this is why these systems aren't turned on. And that's because it would just be the cost of plugging one of these in is enormous. And you can imagine the cost just by looking at the size of the plug and imagine how much electricity it draws. So there was the cost of the electricity, and you can imagine anything that takes that much power is going to generate enormous quantities of heat. So we had the additional cost of getting rid of the heat. Hence, they're not turned on. So there's our Deck 20, 17-year-old computer system exhibit. So now, we'll try to get to the next one. Just go backwards. So now we're coming up on the third exhibit, taking the corner by the flag and sort of heading down this main corridor, our return center aisle, so to speak. And here we have an IBM 4361 from the early 80s. A conventional system. A conventional system, but notice the lower ergonomic shape. It's waist height essentially. No control panel. Self-loading tape drives. Of course, we had to have a tape rack. 33 or 3880 disc controller. A string of 3375 drives, Winchester drives. A something printer. Look how long and skinny it is. Of course, we need to have a sample terminal and a terminal cluster controller in the back. And everything, as you can see, has a sign on it describing its function. One of the things that we were able now to point out by the time we got around to this exhibit is, notice how every company has their own terminal. Every company has their own printer. Companies have their own disk drives. Everybody felt compelled to produce their own equipment and provide a complete solution. Now, of course, we were able to say that aside from IBM, other manufacturers bought their particular disk drives or printers from a single company, and that company would OEM the product back to them, labeling it and perhaps painting it in a unique way for that particular vendor, like Unisys or Honeywell. Here we talk about the fact that data centers are going to lights out conditions, and that means that you don't need any people. So here, to contrast with the original tape drive, these windows drop automatically. You don't need to slide them by hand. You don't need to take the cover off the reel of tape and then thread it through the workings yourself. You're able to just slap on the tape with its outside ring, push the start buttons and the load button, the window goes up, and the threading takes place automatically. So it's the beginning of the lights out data center, where we're making it easier for the machine to, or faster to do things, therefore requiring less people. for the same amount of work. Now, of course, they use carousels where the tapes are stacked, and a utility remembers what tape is where in the stack, and when that particular tape is required, it just raises or lowers the tapes in the carousel until the read-write slot is matched, shoves it in, does whatever it needs to do, and spits it back out and puts it back in the carousel, all automatically. Somebody loaded the carousel originally, somebody would add tapes to it and remove tapes for backup and things like that for offsite storage, but the day-to-day stuff is handled completely automatically. We also contrasted the disk technology. Excuse me. Showing people the Winchester fixed position technology. So there's the drive, a high-capacity drive, high-speed drive, but it's fixed in position. It stays there until it's broken. It's a huge thing. So we've given a demonstration of a 5-platter, 10-platter removable drive, and now a whatever platter this is, fixed drive, how the technology changed. In other words, there's so much capacity on this one, you don't need to be swapping them back and forth. And also the units have come down in price performance that you can get as many as you need and not have to get a minimal and then keep swapping the packs back and forth. It's a handsome printer. We talk about printer technology, how it also reduced. At this point in time, it's applicable to talk about core memory. Went from big cores to little cores. Printers keep coming down. Carbon paper. Multi-part forms went from carbon paper, which is very messy, to chemically coated paper that didn't have any residual, anything to rub off on you, on the operator. Everything, absolutely everything underwent improvement, miniaturization, and increased ease of use. So we need to mention the control panel. There isn't one. Not a shame. But here's a 3200 type terminal that has special controls on it to actually turn the machine on and off, to boot it, and a little operator documentation built right into the keyboard, little flip charts. So now we'll see if we can stretch over to the next exhibit, the next to last. And that's a Unisys System 80 Model 20. Yep, it's going to work. Okay, so here's the big view. Notice the signage. Processor and I/O controller, string of drives, fixed drives again, a printer. There's a story here though. This is a slave printer. It's not the high-speed primary printer. This is a 300 line a minute printer from Unisys. The primary 1100 line a minute printer is very, very, very tall and very, very, very ugly. It is a really odd shape, and it is not on casters, so therefore we couldn't bring it over. Beside it there you see a peripheral, like a channel controller. We've lost a tape drive. A waist height type tape drive came with the system, but we don't know where it is right now. And all the peripherals were plugged into all the I/O peripherals and storage were plugged into that cluster controller or channel controller. And here is the back of the main console. We also showed some telecommunications gear, a multiplexer and a modem. And we also have a 3741 from IBM, because this thing also has a 8-inch floppy built into the operator's console. And again, the unique design, another tube. Well, I'll be darned. Emphasizing again how everybody had to make everything, or at least brand name everything on their own. And they also had third-party service was rare in those days also. It's also interesting to note that when you get up close to Unisys equipment and Sperry Rand equipment, a lot of this still says Sperry Rand. The CPU, as you can see, is a Unisys box. But, see the tape drives, or sorry, the disk drives, the printer, and the terminal. That one even says UNIVAC, see? UNIVAC there. So in any case, they didn't have any product numbers. Whereas on the IBM boxes and the DEC boxes, everything had a LA 120 or whatever it was. And there, IBM, see the label there? That would show that it's a 30 whatever it is tape drive. You saw on the terminal where it was a 3278. So no numbers on the Unisys stuff. Interesting to note. So now to get another view of this, I'm going to have to unplug at it. So here's exhibit number 4, and here shows the 2 bays of the Unisys mainframe. Again, quite tall, quite big. Let's get an idea just how big it is. See if we can do this. Yeah. Big. Very big. So these devices, if we were able to have brought over RPO 7s on the DEC system, you would have noticed, hey, they're identical to these. And quite so, because they're made by a third party altogether. So Unisys and DEC had bought their hard drives from the same firm at one point in time. Notice how we have the one cover up to see the Winchester inside, and people were encouraged to open up, lift up, push buttons, do whatever you want. If you were on the ball, you would have noticed that that end piece should be here, and this should be the other way around so that you don't see these on-off switches. Here's a remnant control panel. Nice to see. Some signage. Here we have the last output that came off that printer. Still there. See what I mean? $1980, whatever it was. Terminal. And now here's the key to tape. So, you know, we talked about how the key punches evolved into the key to tape system over there. Well, here's a key to diskette system using 8.5-inch floppies. So a floppy that big, here's my hand. Big floppy. Would slide into here. You do all your keyboarding, looking all the time at what you're entering off this little periscope, little screen. Did error checking, and you could revise your errors. And when you're done, put this in the mail or send it down the hall to the data center, where the data center operator would slide it into this drive. Oops, well, whatever. And be able to issue the appropriate commands through the console. And poof, you've got some data in the system. So we showed all the different forms of data entry also. That being consistent with our theme, which is, everyone say it now, input, process, output. Okay, now we go over to our last, really our last exhibit. And it's the AMDOL. The AMDOL. Now remember you thought the other one was big? This one is 6 feet tall, much taller than the Unisys box over there. It's a long one. It's also a processor complex. We have one bank of one system there, and another system tagged onto the end of it over there. It's the world's largest air-cooled computer, and it's just massive. These are the two power units, one for each of the processors. There should be two consoles, but they weren't shipped to us originally, and it was only discovered when we tried to put the system back together for the exhibit. So it was quite a sight to behold, but notice we're void of any kind of peripherals, and that's because the Amdahl just made processors. Excuse me for a minute. This is behind. We were just standing over there a moment ago. So this is now behind the Amdahl. And the Amdahl, being a very special box, the world's largest air-cooled computer, means that it's packaged in a very precise way. And so we couldn't let people, because of that, people weren't able to freely open up the doors and peek inside. So we had Amdahl, when they came to set it up for us, they exposed this one particular part of the I/O boards, the I/O system, I mean. So you can see how there'd be a shroud, which is in fact this thing here. It would blast the air through the boards. Notice how the boards are harnessed. Incredible engineering, just incredible. And notice further how every IC, every component on one of these multi-layer PCBs has a little cooling tower. So when you really look at this thing, it looks like a city of the future with streets and tall buildings of varying shapes. Absolutely everything about the Amdahl reeks of quality. And we had a little sign on the outer edge of the corner, this corner of the machine, guiding people around to the back. Because what we essentially did was we had a front and a back of every exhibit. It was something that we were concerned about. We would always consistently show something in the front and expose components in the back. Here's an assortment of apples and the desk director that we got. Books and books and books came to us. A compact portable came to us yesterday. All sorts of wonderful equipment. So here's where we've migrated from. There's the last exhibit. You know, we sort of come all the way around. And now we're here, we're leaving. This is the exit. One of the visitors, Richard Levine, who came from Toronto, mentioned how due to the history of this particular control panel, having been from the machine where the APL interpreter for the 5100 had been developed, so says that little plaque, and the plaque was documented by Richard Lathwell, the last owner of that particular panel, him being also the author of the APL interpreter for the 5100. Richard Levine said, well, you know, the way Richard Levine found out about the museum was through Gaëtan Gaudin, who provided us with the MCM machine here, which is an APL machine. He says, well, you've got the MCM, you've got that, you say you've got a 5100 in your warehouse, why don't you put an APL exhibit together, and then I'll advertise it over the APL news group in Toronto. So we did. We even went as far as to get an APL 2741 as part of our acquisition at U of W, and we put this little exhibit together. And of course, not a soul from that group came down, but it was still a marvelous idea. And it was nice to know that we could react that quickly to demands. You know, the market wants this, we're able to provide. The question on everybody's mind that we'll have to research is this the world's first commercial microcomputer? Who is to know? And then, should point out, one of our dedicated volunteers, Paul Cates, brought in these cartoons. They're just marvelous things, and many people enjoyed as they were browsing through the humor. And then this is the exhibit we took to Comdex. The Art, Science, and Evolution of Computer Control Panels. Something very close to my heart. So, Control Panel 1, the 75, machines just weren't that reliable. So we needed this type of additional diagnostic facilities on a machine to help diagnose problems. and also to monitor the progress of the system. Mini computers came out. Control panels remained, but of course they got much smaller. And notice too, the appearance, the nice reds, the pinks, you know, or whatever those colors are. It evolved. It got smaller as the technology required it to. There, that's a better shot. And but nevertheless, it remained. The next step in the evolution is the on-off switch, the single on-off switch. Whether you're talking about a PC or a 3330, a 3090, that's all you have. That's the control panel. On and off. That's all there is to it. But then look what happened. GUIs came out. And the control panel melted from hardware into software. That's the term that I like. Hardware melts into software. And we now have control panels on GUIs, as demonstrated by this Mac. But lo and behold, as Control Panel 5 tells us, when Thinking Machine Corporation got some feedback from clients that said, we like this big black slab, it does nice things for us, this big high-speed parallel processor, but we never have a feel for what it's doing. So, Thinking Machines then put, I hope you can see it, at the end of each one of the layers, you can see a bank of lights behind a red plastic covering, and the lights would just perform at random according to the processor load. So the more the processor is doing, the more lights flash and the faster they flash, and the less the processor is doing, the less lights flash and the slower they flash. So there's some psychology to this big old thing. Maybe it's not a thing of the past at all. So there's what we took to Comdex, and since we had it, what the heck. And these pedestals came from the art gallery, the city of Kitchener. Well, I guess it's the Kitchener-Waterloo Art Gallery now. There's the exit. And as you were leaving, you'd be thanked for coming. We'd shake your hand because we were just so pleased that the person would come and take the time to spend at this endeavor and support us with their $2, $5, whatever it was, so that we can move this project on to its next